Good morning, everyone. Convening the Committee on Labor and Government Operations. It is Thursday, March 23rd, 2023, 9:33 a.m. in conference room 309. We have a couple of items on the agenda today. First up, we've got SB 291 SC2 relating to budget-related reports. One testifier today and one testimony submitted. Department of Budget and Finance with comments.
Chair, Vice Chair, we're submitting testimony on the first three bills on the agenda, and basically the first three bills are related, and we stand by our written testimony. We just want to point out that with respect to the proposed language adjustments, with respect to the variance report is really, it's on budget execution, so it's supposed to compare what the budget was based on and what we're actually doing. So the language just doesn't seem to mesh up too well in that regard, the way it's proposed for those things.
Okay.
Be available for any questions.
Yeah, stick up there for a sec, because I know I've got a question, but any committee members, any questions? So you mentioned in your report that, in your testimony, that it would take time and effort to change this. How much time do you think it would need? Because these are effective upon approval right now as passed over by the Senate. Not saying that they're going to leave the committee that way, but about how much time would you need if these bills were to pass?
Because the formats we use for the variance report and things like that it's a really legacy format from the mainframe. So it's going to be quite a major effort to try to reformat that. And reading the language, it's not that clear what, we're supposed to use better measures and things like that. I don't know if it affects the format per se. The fourth bill on the agenda can affect the format, and we have more concerns with that one. This one is in terms of what measures and what we put into the budget, the measures of effectiveness. It's asking us to use, I guess, the latest and greatest, but, so getting those type of proxies and things like that is difficult, but it's not that clear how it affects the format per se, except if they're talking about doing the variance, because the variance is based on, we presented a budget, it was approved, and now we're trying to compare what it is in execution.
Yeah, and comparing the latest and greatest seems fairly reasonable to me. So what you're saying is you wouldn't need extra time or necessarily like a program change to affect the first three bills on the agenda. It would just take you more time to do it.
Well, if you're talking about the program memorandum and that part, it doesn't affect. But the variance report, asking us to update measures because we're proposing measures that are set. The budget is based on these measures and this thing. So and then what we're comparing is what we actually did to what we had told you we proposed. Mm-hmm. So if they want that to be continually update to what it changes, it makes it a little difficult in terms of the benchmark, how we're comparing against, for the purposes of doing a variance comparison.
Okay.
I don't know if that was clear, but.
So if it's effective upon approval, it wouldn't make a difference to you if it was effective upon approval as opposed to effective a couple months from approval?
It'd be better if we had more time to.
How much time?
Try to work out the thing.
How much time?
Well, the program memorandum, the next time we do it is the next time, 2 years from now. Mm. The variance report and things we do annually. So
would you need more time though if it was annual? Because you'll have time until the next one's due, right?
Yeah, we have some time to do it. I'm not sure.
If this was effective upon approval, then it's fine because the next variance report isn't due for a little while.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Members? Okay, if not, we are about to do the same thing 2 more times. Next up on the agenda is SB 292, ST2, relating to budget-related reports. Budget and finance? Same? Okay, any questions, members? All right, seeing none, moving on to SB 293, ST2, relating to budget-related reports. Budget and finance, same. Members, any questions? No? Okay. Moving on to SB 299, ST2, relating to budget-related submissions to the legislature. Budget and finance.
Neil Maher again for the department, chair, vice chair, members of the committee. You know, Chapter 37 sets out the basic format. This thing just says we're supposed to present some kind of documents as determined by the legislature. You know, the general formats are, the requirements are specified currently in the statute, so we're not exactly sure what changes are going to be required and who speaks for the legislature. Normally, the legislature speaks as a body. So if there's going to be requirements, I don't know what they're talking about it being.
So how much, oh, I'm sorry, was that the end of your testimony?
Yes.
Members, any questions about this? Okay, so how much before it's due would you need the legislature to give you the formatting? Months we're talking about, or?
Yes.
How about how long you think?
Because you know, the formal document that we submit, you remember those, I don't know if you were here, those really thick binders that we used to present, like several volumes worth. Right now, we present that to the ledge online. So we have.
Forgive me, when is it due?
It's due 30 days, 30 working days before the start of the session. So it's
Okay.
usually December. It's usually the second week in December.
So I'd like to give you more time. The problem is we have elections that end early November. And if I set it as, we just don't know who is going to be in the House or Senate necessarily on any given, every other year. So if we were to set it as, you know, a week after Election Day or something to get you folks the formats, it would only give you another, not very much more time, yeah?
No, see, and so that's the question, because the formal formats that are presented into the budget, we have it online. I don't know how much the legislature uses it. The formats that we present that we use for decision making and the legislature uses for follow-up in their decision making is informal, but we've been using it for the last 10 to 15 years, the basic format. So
Who gives you this informal format?
no, it's something we develop, and then, you know, it's our
Okay.
Form A's, Form B's. And we're not sure what the legislature wants beyond that, because in testimony, the legislature specifies their own format. They want presentations, what information they want, and we follow that. As far as the budget document itself, we're not sure what anybody's looking for. And if you want certain reports to be printed, you know, we use the mainframe system to produce the reports that we present in the formal budget document. So if that has to be changed, you know, it can't be a moving target that changes every time there's a new chair or things like that. It's going to be very difficult to conform to that.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, because if there's a new finance chair or WAM chair, not that it happens very often, typically, but the data needs to be given to them in a form that they can use effectively, right?
Yes, and we do that in terms of the testimony that's presented, because they specify a format in terms of what information do they want.
So you form the report, and then through testimony, they'll tell you what else they need, and then you'll give it to them?
Yes, because we have, maybe I'm not explaining myself, we have a formal way of presenting the budget, based on Chapter 37. And those essentially are the old 3 volumes of very detailed information, program by program. In terms of how we evaluate the budget and get it into that final format, we use a more informal process where we have packages that shows each budget request. We have another spreadsheet that summarizes by items.
Okay. No, that's okay. I'll see if I can buy you guys a little more time. Any more questions, members?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to SB 1196 SD1 relating to boards and commissions. We have no testimony submitted for this matter. Anyone here to testify about this in person or on Zoom? Okay. Okay, I guess we've got no one. Moving on to SB 1518 SD2 HD1 relating to the Department of Education. We have Department of Education in person to testify.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kurt Otaguro, Deputy Superintendent, testifying on behalf of the department. We stand on a written testimony in support of this measure. 1518 is important. Just a little bit of background. The legislature has given our schools tremendous flexibility and autonomy to do things at the school level. With 258 schools on all islands, you can see the need for the ability to move quickly for whatever they need to accomplish to do education and the supporting facilities and have you. So this bill is really intended to complement what is already done. For example, on the schools have funding that they control, weighted student formulas, and so they have the decision-making power to do that. On the state side, at our level, we do have to follow procurement laws, and sometimes these laws prohibit them from really expanding what they had the autonomy to do. And so all this bill is trying to do is to increase that dollar amount of procurement so that they can continue to acquire textbooks, educational materials, and what have you in a more expeditious way. I think there was other hearings that indicated that sometimes it takes longer for a student to get access to the educational materials. It's no longer textbooks, it involves technology. And so these things we have to adapt with the times. And so really this bill is asking for that autonomy to increase the procurement laws or the procurement limits to a larger amount. I know that our other agencies have some concerns with regard to parceling and what have you. I feel that there's a way that we can manage that, and happy to work with the State Procurement Office to figure that out. But thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. Next up, State Procurement Office. In opposition.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bonnie Kahakui, Acting Administrator, State Procurement Office. The State Procurement Office stands in strong opposition to this bill, and we've provided lengthy testimony, but I would like to point out a couple of things, well, more than a few. If this bill passes, we envision the impact will be no transparency, no open competition, no accountability. It opens the door for parceling, which Deputy Kotagura, recognize themselves. But there are other irregularities that could go on in the procurement. And there are other avenues that could reach the same means by which he's asking. There are procurement exemptions already allowed in the statutes and rules, which could be utilized. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions?
Chair, I have a question.
Yep. Rep. Capella.
For state procurement, you mentioned exemptions. Can you name an example of some of the exemptions?
Sure. Okay, so one of the exemptions allows for research and reference material, including books, maps, periodical and pamphlets, which are published, print, video, electronic, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. Anyway, so that's already exemption that's already allowed in rules.
What about construction? Say that there's a school that is missing a fire alarm, because I have a school in my district that doesn't have a fire alarm.
Okay, that's not an exemption. Construction is not exempted from statute currently at all. What our concern with those kinds of things would be, you're only getting 3 quotes, depending on the dollar value. So are they going to the same vendors over and over again for whatever kind of construction, small purchase? Will they start parceling it in order to evade the procurement rules? So we have an issue with that. And I know there's some vendors that have expressed concern that even though they're small jobs, they want an equal footing, an equal opportunity to compete. And if you're leaving this up to the school at the school level, which we don't have a problem with, but just getting 3 quotes. So you call the same 3 friends or 3 acquaintances that you've done business with or that you have done business with, but it's the same ones over and over again. We would like to know what kind of procedures are going to be in place that would prevent this from happening. It's not open competition any longer.
Chair, a quick follow-up.
Yeah, please.
I'm wondering if part of this bill comes from certain schools feeling like they may not be getting certain materials or things fast enough. Is there a way that we could help speed up that process while still keeping transparency, which I think is incredibly important?
So currently, the State Procurement Office and the executive branch agencies uses our electronic procurement system for anything 15,000 to less than 100,000 for goods and services, and up to 250,000 for that. In small purchases, there is not a specific timeline in which to procure, so it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, depending on the urgency of the goods and services that are needed. So we don't know how this would be more efficient to call, pick up the phone and call around, get responses. To me, that would be actually more labor intensive as opposed to more efficient. And it would still be transparent because now it's open up to everybody that wants to look at it. And if they choose not to submit a bid, that's fine. But at least they've given the opportunity to do so. Otherwise, with the 3 quotes, we don't know what that looks like, but we can conceivably see the school knows this particular vendor. He's done a good job, which is great. Let's go to him again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
DOE, can I get your response on that? What advantages do you see by using this 3 quote system, and why aren't you folks using the electronic system more?
Good question. They did a pilot prior to COVID, and unfortunately it got stopped, and we had an integration task to our new FMS system, and so that just stopped. So there may be that possibility, Chair. I guess with regard to training 258 schools, again, I just go back to the model that we have. It's not a state agency. These are 258 independent areas and rural areas, and so the ability to procure quickly, as State Procurement Officer said, is something that can be done quicker. Now, in local areas, rural areas, there's only a handful. The reality is there are only a handful of contractors for those kind of construction projects, and it's hard to come by for those kind of things. With regard to educational training and materials, I would have to say that maybe that would be a different source, and possibly we could look into posting things on hands through the HiPro system. I know that was an attempt, again, we just never followed through at that. So that would be something that we could train staff on to do the posting of it.
Yeah, I think that'd be probably better. And if this is a difference between urban and rural, I mean, could this exemption be only applicable on the neighbor islands where maybe they do have fewer vendors, but on Oahu, where there are more vendors, have them go through the electronic system? Or have this exception not apply?
Yeah, I haven't thought.
Yeah,
I haven't thought through the Oahu. I mean, it's obvious more resources available here on this island, but that doesn't necessarily prevent someone in Haula or just similar things.
There are certainly rural portions of this. I mean, this is not going to be perfect. Right?
Yes,
and
it
I
won't
want
be
to make sure
perfect.
that perfect is not the enemy of the good here.
Yeah. I believe, and talking to State Procurement Office, transparency is important, and parceling is not allowed. There has to be a way that we can appease the concern that people are playing shenanigans out there, because we wouldn't want to stand for that either. But
SPO also testified that only had 10 people use the electronic system in the past year. I mean, it was something very, very low. Why isn't the DOE using the electronic system more? Is it just a lack of training?
it's probably a lack of training. It's the procurement aspect of it, right? I mean, the schools are not procurement experts per se. So the simpler you can keep it with structure and transparency, I think it's better.
I mean, I hate to put it this way, but schools procure a lot of things. So just because they're not procurement experts, that they need to kind of become at least procurement proficient. The fact that the schools are not is kind of disturbing to me, that we have this electronic system that the schools are not using, not because it's necessarily ineffective, but because they just don't have the training. Why isn't the DOE trained the schools to use this electronic system?
It's not that we can't train them. Okay, don't get me wrong. They should be procurement knowledgeable, no question about it. That everybody in the state that does anything has to be that. I think where the superintendent was headed for were there are some unique things in the educational system that is just not. You don't have a lot of bidders. And so having the ability to move quickly on a health-related technology or CTE type of equipment, very unique to education, is something that we're just trying to get quicker and more efficient that way. Running it through an electronic system can, but we're going to get everything under the sun. If there's a specific technology that has been proven, then that's what we are trying to accomplish. And I agree, it's not
Can't you
perfect.
just make the request more specific for that specific piece of technology? I'm failing to see the advantage of paper versus this electronic system that we stood up. Why not just use the electronic system? I don't see how that's slower. Or has it been proven to be slower in the DOE's experience?
I don't think we've measured that in terms of speed of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we might need just more time for you folks to get trained to start using this system. You might find it's much faster. It seems like this is might be a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. If the DOE really just isn't using the system, I mean, how do you folks even know that you need a exemption from it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like I said, what we need to do is look at the training aspect of it for the 258 against the need to just have them continue their procurement responsibilities in the most efficient way. I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, we're trying to get them to leverage what was already been given to them, which is funding at their level to move as quick as they can. And this is when we talk to the school principals, this is what they collectively feel is important to do. Now, can we convince them another way? I'm sure we could, but we're just speaking on behalf of
They feel that it's important, but they haven't learned the new system. And they haven't tried the new system.
I believe they have, and I can't speak for the principals. I don't know if anybody, but yeah, nobody's here.
SPO, how long has the system been around for?
It's been a while, right?
2014.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that part of this is a 2-year sunset, right? So we could do it at the same time, right? And
Yeah.
we're allowing our schools to train up as well, but so we'd allow the schools to train up, but the 2-year sunset would also then have us to come back and take a look. But in the meantime, we wouldn't want to hamper the schools from buying the goods and services that they would need in that time as we're training them up. So I think
It's
that's
9
good.
years to learn this thing. So if we give you 2, you promise? I mean,
Yeah, we're gonna do our best. Yes,
Okay.
we are looking forward to that.
SPO, do you guys have training for them to learn the system better? I mean, I don't know what the holdup is.
Thank you for the question. So we do offer training to anyone that would like to train. Now, I do need to clarify that there are 2 different systems. The state procurement and executive branch uses one system and called HYPRO, and DOE uses HEP. So I don't know where they draw the line, which one they can use. We did have HEPs in the past. We found it to be not as user-friendly, so we developed our own system.
Okay.
But we do provide training, and we have gone out to, it's online, but we've also gone out to individual departments and trained departments one-on-one. And we have videos, we have user manuals that are available.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members?
Sorry,
Yep.
one more.
Rep. Sayama. SPO?
SPO. Sorry, you just mentioned the 2 different systems for procurement.
Yes.
And inferring that I assume the SPO version or the one that executive office uses is more efficient or user-friendly?
Yes, when we developed it, well, there was a couple of reasons why we moved from HEPS. One of them was it was not as user-friendly, and there were we weren't sure of where their direction was going, and we needed to be proactive in case that system was not sustainable.
Okay.
So we built our own system.
So I'm just curious, do you know why the DOE still uses this seemingly outdated version?
I don't know, but what I heard is that the HEP system is more conducive to construction.
Okay.
But I can't, speak to that
Right,
specifically.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there going to be a problem if we make you guys switch over to HiPro?
Over time?
Over 2 years? Okay. Any other questions, members? All right, if not, let's move on to the last bill on the agenda, SB 1509 ST2, relating to the state archives. I believe we have one testifier, Dags, in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify. Representing Comptroller Regan, I am Dr. Adam Jansen, State Archivist and Administrator of the Public Archives. We stand on our testimony in strong support of this bill, and obviously this will be a less, I believe the term was, exciting hearing this time. To reassure the committee, we did have a meeting with UH, and we did clarify the language so that there wasn't any conflict or nebulous area that they took exception to. And as an archivist, I really appreciate that this bill is attempting to open up more avenues of funding for us so that we can start to create equity of access. We have 1.5 million photographs in the Star Advertiser collection from the 1940s to the 19aughts, or 2020s. But nobody can access those. What about Hawaiians who cannot travel, who have to work during their time? So we're asking for more funding and positions so that we can digitize more to put it online, so that regardless of your ability to travel, regardless of where you live, we want to make this universally accessible because we have an unparalleled collection of Hawaii's history that is really difficult at this point to access. So I appreciate your consideration of this bill, and I welcome any questions or comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, we did receive testimony and support from University of Hawaii, so I appreciate you guys working that out. Any questions, members? Okay, if not, we'll recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, we're reconvening the Committee on Labor and Government Operations for the 9:30 a.m. agenda. Members, we got a number of bills here. We'll be making some changes to some of them, a little more significant changes to some of them down the line. But for the first three, SB 291, SB SD2, well, we'll just start off with SB 291 SD2 relating to budget-related reports. Chair's recommendation is just to defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or concerns? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on Senate Bill 291 SD2. The Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Martinez is excused. Representative Sayama?
Aye.
Representative Tam is also excused. Representative Alcos?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to SB 292 SD2 related to budget-related reports. Same song and dance, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or comments? Not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on SB 292 SD2. The Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Martinez and Tam. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, third time's a charm. SB 293 SD2 relating to budget-related reports, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or comments, members? Not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on SB 293 SD2. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting no or with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to SB 299 SD2 relating to budget-related submissions to the legislature. Chair's recommendation is to further defect the date to June 30th, 3000. We are going to make the format one agreed to by the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. And I will be some tech amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. And I'm going to be putting in the committee report for the next committee to take a look at timing of when the format should be given, or at least finalized to be given to Budget and Finance. Members, any questions or comments? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on SB 299 SD2. The Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Would anyone like to vote no or with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to SB 1196 SD1 relating to boards and commissions. Chair notes that there is no testimony submitted in this hearing or any hearing for this bill so far. So maybe no news is good news. We'll keep it going if no one has any objections. We're going to be further defecting the date to June 30th, 3000 to encourage further discussion. Members, any questions or comments on this bill? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on Senate Bill 1196 SD1. The Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to SB 1518 SD2 HD1 relating to the Department of Education. We are going to be amending the bill to require the DOE to move to the executive branch's e-procurement system by the time this bill sunsets in 2 years. We are going to be having this bill only be applicable to counties under 500,000 to target more rural areas where they may not have access to as many vendors. Technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any questions or comments on this bill? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on Senate Bill 1518 SD2 HD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to SB 1509 SD2 relating to the State Archives. We'll just be further defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. And I just wanted to thank the parties for getting together and working this out. Members, any questions or comments? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on Senate Bill 1509 SD2. The Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. We're moving on to our DM only portion for SB 722 SD2 relating to occupational safety and health. Chair's recommendation is to add language that this new special fund may only be used for HIOSH expenses that do not conflict with federal or state law in light of DLIR's testimony. Members, any questions or comments on this? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on Senate Bill 722 SD2. The chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Anyone voting with reservations or no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to the last bill on the agenda, SB 725 SD2 relating to teleworking. We'll be making some fairly extensive changes to this bill after speaking with the Senate and some stakeholders on the issue, and also thank you to my vice chair for helping us navigate this situation as well. We're going to be deleting from the report the primary locations where employees are teleworking from. We're going to be adding the number of employees in each department that could and this is just for the report portion of it, adding the number of employees in each department that could effectively telework, an analysis of computer programs currently available to departments that could be acquired by expanding existing software suites that can be used to track teleworking employees' progress and performance on deliverables and tasks. And also adding to the report the number of employees in each department that had their telework privileges revoked due to performance or behavioral issues. We're changing this to a pilot program so it doesn't apply statewide for up to 3 departments or portions of department if at the discretion of the DHER director. So if the DHER director wants to apply this to just DOT highways, for example, instead of all of DOT, that could count as one. We are going to be changing the telework monitoring program to focus more on employee deliverables and performance rather than tracking employee activity. And we're also adding in training for managers and employees on how to use the system once it is acquired. We're going to be requiring the telework monitoring system to be also applied to in-office employees as well to form a basis of comparison on productivity between telework and in-office employees. We're deleting the 1 FTE for the report, but we're going to add in 1 FTE to actually manage this pilot program for the telework monitoring system. And we are creating a new section for funding just for training managers to effectively manage the teleworking and hybrid for managers to effectively manage telework and hybrid employees' progress and performance on tasks aside from the electronic system. So that would apply to all departments, not just the ones in the pilot program. I do want to note that there might be collective bargaining issues for this since telework is a negotiated thing, but the telework policy that was negotiated and agreed upon is still in effect. So from my perspective, this is more of a policy based on manager training and data collection for employee progress, rather than dictating how many days or whatnot an employee can or cannot telework. Members, any questions or comments?
Chair.
Yeah, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for all the work you've put into this bill. I still do have concerns, as you noted, for the collective bargaining piece. I think this is clearly a work condition situation that should be negotiated between the employer and all the exclusive representatives that represent state employees. Again, I don't think it's our role to necessarily legislate how operations are handled at the executive branch. But again, this is an improvement, so I do respect your desire to keep this moving further along the process. So I'll be voting with reservations.
Okay, and I will be putting in the committee report for the next committee to analyze any collective bargaining issues. I don't feel like the unions weighed in necessarily on that aspect of this, but maybe they can, on this new version of the bill, they can weigh in on whether they think it's a collective bargaining issue as well. Members, any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members voting on Senate Bill 725 SD2. The Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes with reservations. Anyone else with reservations or no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. We are adjourned. morning, everyone. We are convening the Committee on Labor and Government Operations. It is the joint committee between Labor and Government Operations and the Committee on Education. It is Thursday, March 23rd, 2023, 11 a.m., 11:01 a.m. in conference room 309. We have one bill on the agenda today. It's SB 1141, relating to workers' compensation. Two testifiers today, both in support. First up is the Hawaii State Public Library System.
Aloha, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. The Hawaii State Public Library System stands in support of this bill. It is helpful to us because it clarifies workers' compensation, which since 1981, when we split from the Department of Ed, was not clear how to mandate it, and we had no resources when we split for workmen's compensation. So now it clarifies the role and also provides resources to the Department of Human Resources. So we are in support and are happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Department of Human Resource Development.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. I'm Brenna Hashimoto, Director of DHERD. We're also in support of this measure. Historically, if I could just share a bit of context, the Department of Human Resources Development has historically been consolidating workers' comp claims management within our department. It actually started in the 80s, but at that time, libraries was still part of DOE, so they were not under our umbrella. And at some point in time when DOE became their own jurisdiction, it was clarified in statute that libraries was still part of DHERD's civil service system. However, the workers' comp was sort of in this gray area. When we took over claims management for the other state departments, all of those state departments contributed resources in terms of either funds, positions, and whatnot in order to support that endeavor. Libraries was not included in that contribution of support for DHERD, and so when we became the claims manager for the library claims, which was around 2012, since that time we've used a memorandum of agreement with them contributing the use of a temporary position for DHERD's purposes, as well as they have been paying their own medical claims through their funds. And so in order to sort of streamline that process and clarify that we will take on that responsibility, we do need to be made whole in terms of staffing and funds to support the claim. So this wouldn't do that. And so we're supportive. I'm available for any other questions you might have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions?
I have a quick question. For libraries, please. Thank you for being here. So the funding for workers' compensation related admin, that's not a line item in the budget, is that correct?
Yes, it is not a line item in the budget, no.
So how do you articulate that through an MOA in terms of the cost?
So we actually have to use our salary savings to pay for, so the state librarian can create a position, temporary positions. So we've created a temporary position that we have given to, we would give to the Department of Human Resources for providing workers' compensation. And then we also pay for any of the additional costs through, it's all salary savings. We have to piece together to provide the service. So it means it takes away funding for positions within the library.
So when you say that you need at least $50,000 to remain, you mean that you want that sequence in EDN 407?
It would be helpful, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, reconvening the 11 o'clock agenda. So for SB 1141 SD2, Chair's recommendation is to effect the date to upon approval. And I'd also like to note in the committee report, the Hawaii State Library's request that at least $50,000 remain in their budget to ensure that they can process workers' comp claims for current employees through the state payroll system. Members on LGO, any questions or comments? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on SB 1141 SD2, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Martinez is excused. Representative Sayama is also excused, as is Representative Tam. Representative Alcos?
Aye.
Thank you. Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair. Members, EDN members, same recommendation. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing SB 1141 SD2 with amendments. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Rep. Epsilon?
Aye.
Rep. Capella?
Aye.
Rep. La Chica?
Aye.
Rep. Martinez excused. Rep. Peruso?
Aye.
Rep. Matayoshi?
Aye.
Rep. Quinlan is excused. Rep. Todd?
Aye.
And Rep. Garcia is excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned.